What's your name?
Malka.
Malka. Nice to meet you. So this is, you do this every day? This
5 days a week.
5 days a week.
But I'm leaving town on Wednesday, so
Okay.
I'll be back in 2 weeks after that.
Where are you going?
Denver, LA, San Diego, Vancouver, Montreal.
Speaking.
Speaking and also grandson's bar mitzvah.
Oh, good.
והאלנו בתורתך ודבר דברינו במצוותיך ויחד לבבינו באהבה יראת שמך והאלנו בתורתך Rabbi Libavenu B'Mitzvah V'Yachid Libavenu Yavo Yira Hashem Eloka V'lo Yinei V'lo Yinikamalein V'lo Yinikashem The words to that song are from the prayer before Shema. Enlighten our eyes in your Torah, and bond our hearts with your mitzvot. We should not be eternally shamed. Right? Actually, we were learning it we're learning this teaching from the Alter Rebbe, from the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, Shneur Zalman, from 200 years ago. And so people are coming in, like, for parts of it here, parts of it there, parts of it there. So I'm going to try to just give you a little bit of synopsis so that you can follow where we're going, where we are today. And it's about it's interesting, the holiday of Shavuot. If you see something that you're not familiar with, tell me, yeah? Promise. The holiday of Shavuot is the one holiday in the Torah that the Torah doesn't give a date for it. Did you know that?
Yeah.
The Torah actually doesn't tell you what date. It just says that starting on the second day of Pesach, count 49 days, and the 50th day is Shavuot. Right? So just from that alone, you realize that Shavuot is connected to Pesach. Okay? In other words, something began on Pesach and reached its conclusion on Shavuot. Okay?
Every other holiday.
Every other holiday, the Torah tells you when it is. And this you have to count up to it, right? Okay. So how are they connected? So Pesach is the beginning of the Exodus and liberation, and it doesn't really get completed until Shavuot. Okay. In fact, when Moshe Rabbeinu is on Mount Sinai the first time, at the burning bush, he sort of inquires, like, in what merit is it that God is taking us out of Egypt, right? He wants to know, okay, why, there was, initially Hashem said to Abraham Avinu that we were going to be enslaved for 400 years, and we ended up being taken out after 210 years. So Moshe Rabbeinu is like wondering, what's happening now? What? And we had fallen to a very low spiritual level. So Moshe Rabbeinu was like wondering, in what merit are we going to be taken out of Mitzrayim? And Hashem says to Moshe, that when you take the people out, you will serve God on this mountain. In other words, that we're taken out of Egypt, we're taken out of the slavery in the merit of the fact that we were, now somebody's at the door. Judy's there, okay. Okay, she's there, get it anyway. So we're taken out of, okay. You'll have to share, okay? So we're taken out of Mitzrayim, we're taken out of Egypt in merit of the fact that when we would be coming out of Egypt, we would be serving God on Mount Sinai. Okay? In other words, so we didn't just get out of Egypt just, okay, you're out of Egypt, you're out of slavery, and that's that. And there were a lot of people who it took them a while to realize that's very, very important to realize that, because in fact, that there was a rebellion right after the splitting of the sea, after we crossed the sea, the Red Sea. The Torah says, "Vayasa Moshe et ha'am." Moshe had to pretty much force a lot of the people to continue traveling into the desert. And the Medrash says that there were a lot of people that said, wait a minute, we're out, the Egyptians have been drowned, we're no longer in danger, so let's stay right over here. Egypt was a very, if you remember, a very fertile land, right? And there were people that said, what, going to the desert? What for? The enemy has been vanquished. And we can stay right over here, and right? There's Israelis in Canada that say that that Moshe Rabbeinu used to stammer, and that he really wanted to tell us that we're going to Canada, but he ended up saying we're going to Canaan. And so there's a lot of people that say what do I have to go to Israel for? I can stay in Canada, etc. Right? Okay, the gang is showing up. Hi. Here, you guys, you can move over here. Benny's over here. And, what? Okay, so, what did you say your name was? Sam. Okay, so Sam, Dave, pass that on to Adin, and the two of you can share it. Okay? If we ever get around to reading inside.
But many people were left behind, weren't they?
Yes, yeah.
Where are we holding here?
We're still, right now, I'm giving you a little bit of a synopsis of what we're doing. What's your name?
Yaakov.
Yaakov. Oh, you're,
Rosen.
yeah. How you doing?
Great.
Good. Give regards to your parents and to your brother, okay? You should have seen his brother at his wedding when he was coming to the chuppah. Do you remember?
Yeah.
When he was coming to see the Kala,
Oh, yeah.
he was jumping like unbelievably high. He was so excited. He was just like jumping like 4 or 5 feet at a time, like, straight up, it was unbelievable. Huh?
I said Michael Jordan was happy on that.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. It was such a simcha.
That's very that.
Like, we should all be blessed that, as we're getting to Shavuot, we should be jumping like that, Okay? Because Shavuot is the big wedding between God and Israel. That's what we're celebrating. The Torah is like the marriage contract. Okay? So, the getting out of Egypt was just the beginning. Okay. Now, what's being discussed over here is that the Alter Rebbe is relating this with the vision of Yecheskel, the vision of the chariot. Yecheskel sees this supernal chariot, right, of God. And one of the things that he says over there is Hachayot Latzov B'Shov. The Chayot, the animals, which is actually referring to a group of angels that are referred to as animals. And the reason they're referred to as animals is because animals don't have free choice. Hi. Animals don't have free choice. And these angels don't have free choice. You'll share with you, yeah? These angels don't have free choice. No, they can share. And in other words, these angels are constantly wanting to serve God and praise God, and they just want to be with God. And their biggest gratification is to be reintegrated into God's essence. They don't want to be separate beings. They just want to, like be swallowed up into God again. And so they're full of inspiration, but then they come back. So they're ratzos, they're rushing forward. In other words, they're inspired, and then they have to come back. Then they're rushing forward, and they're coming back. And what's the relevance for us? The relevance for us is that we also, pretty much all of life, like, the way the computer is working is it's also like on, off, and so on, okay? And we too, we have times that we're really inspired, but inspiration is great. The question is, what do you do after the inspiration, right? So Ratzo is to be inspired, Shov is application, is to apply. So what happened at the time of the Exodus was that it was a moment, if you get too cold, tell me. It was a moment of a great divine revelation. Our souls saw that, and we knew we got to go. And we rushed out of Egypt, okay? But Egypt was still in us, okay? In other words, we geographically left Egypt, but spiritually we didn't leave Egypt yet. Okay, so that's we left Egypt and we started this journey towards Mount Sinai. And what happens at Mount Sinai is that Hashem gives us the Torah, okay, which the way the Alter Rebbe explains it is that Hashem is giving, actually this is the Gemara. The Gemara says, and the word Anochi, this is pretty amazing. The first word of the Ten Commandments, Anochi, the Gemara says, is an acronym for Ana Nafshit Ktavit Yehavit. I, my essence, have given you in writing. In other words, the Torah is God giving us Himself to us, okay, in these words. Okay? And that's why we said before that Matan Torah is like the whole thing that happened at Mount Sinai is the wedding between us and God, right? Hashem, we gave ourselves to God, Naaseh B'Nishma, and God gave Himself to us. So now I can get intellectually learn how to read Hebrew, or in translation, you can read the Torah, right? But that doesn't mean that you already got the Torah. Okay? To get the Torah means that it's not just in your mind, but it's in your guts. Okay? Like there's a phrase in Psalms. King David says, "V'toratcha b'toch me'ai." I want your Torah in my guts. In your kishkas, Jews like kishkas, like is it in your guts? What does it mean in your guts? It means have you absorbed it into your body? Okay? So for example, sorry, move a bit to your right, and you move a bit this way so I want to be able to see her too. Okay? If you don't mind. And we also need a place for Shango. She needs a chair. Can you hear Shango? There's a chair up here. Okay. So with I want your Torah to be in my guts. Okay. Now that means to say that you're learning that when you're learning the Torah that there's a transformation in your physical being. Now everybody knows that when you're learning something, like there are things happening in your brains, there are connections that are going on in your brain and so on, and that the more you meditate on something, it gets grooved into your brain. And now I understand why they used to say it's groovy. Groovy. Okay. That makes sense. That's what means groovy. Okay, it's grooving into your brain. Okay, fine. Maybe, I don't know. Otherwise, what else could it possibly mean? I have no idea. Okay, and but what about, like, for example, the Gabbai of the Kotzker Rebbe said that one day he said to the Rebbe, he said that there was cutlery missing. Some people were stealing their cutlery, and that they have to keep the drawers locked. And the Kotzker Rebbe says, how could anybody possibly steal? It says don't steal. And the Gabbai said, after he heard the Kotzker Rebbe say that, he could never imagine himself taking something that wasn't his. In other words, he just couldn't do it. You know what I mean? Like it was no longer a conscious thing of not to take something that isn't his. His body just couldn't do it anymore, right? In other words, if you really take it in, or for example, in the Ten Commandments, right? What's number 6? Great. Don't commit murder, right? Now imagine we're standing at Mount Sinai, and we're waiting for things to begin, right? And I tug you by the sleeve, and I say, Adin, right? I say, Adin. Sometimes they call me Dan, but it's Adin. I say, Adin, do you think that God is going to tell us something like don't steal? I say, don't commit murder, I mean. Not don't steal, don't commit murder. Adin would look at me and say, like, where are you? Are you here or you're not here? You're standing at Mount Sinai. Do you have any doubts about that, right? So that we need to be told, don't commit murder. We're already in such a high place, we need to be told, don't commit murder, right? Okay. That means that we were already in a place that you just wouldn't do that, right? Maybe the next day, maybe, but right then and there, right? So the Zohar says what?
I don't know if that is. I mean, like in theory, for us to
I'm saying,
speak that down.
yeah, we're down. Yeah, but it's pretty clear. But that's. I mean, if you're already, you counted the 49 days, right? You're already at the 50th gate, right? You've gone through quite a transformation, right? So, I mean, it's obvious that don't commit murder, right? So if someone says that on the street level, when God, he says in the name of the Zohar, on the street level, when we heard don't commit murder, we heard plain and simple, don't physically commit murder. On the higher level, we heard don't embarrass anyone in public. On a higher level than that, we heard don't take your anger out on anyone. And on the highest level, we heard don't even ignore anyone. Right? Now, why? Oh, it's this between the two of you.
Okay.
Because we always say that's a thing.
Right.
We always ignoring someone is we explain how bad it is.
Yeah.
For to hear it come from that root,
Now you know
that's
where it's
pretty
from.
cool. I like that.
Okay. Now, suppose, for example, you wouldn't hear this, that you didn't hear this teaching right now, right? And you would go off and you would sit down and meditate on don't commit murder, right? The more refined that you are, the closer you would get to this idea of not even ignoring anyone, right? In other words, we thank God nobody over here is going to commit murder, right? But sometimes it happens that maybe we embarrass somebody publicly, right? And then we feel bad about it, right? Sometimes we take our anger out on someone. Maybe we feel bad about it, right? If you ignore somebody, how often do you feel bad that you ignored someone, right?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What is the connection between those different definitions of murder? Or those different
They're all different levels of murder.
How does one come to that? I don't think I would ever be able to come to that on my own. Or where does that come from?
Well, you're going to be back tomorrow? So, God willing. So take a half an hour today and meditate on it and tell me if you got there. Now, I can answer you, but I'd rather that you take 15, 20 minutes to meditate on it, and you'll know the answer yourself. Okay? So we want to get to that place that when Hashem is giving us the Torah, we're receiving it not just as a mind trip, but that it becomes part of our being. I remember the first year that I started teaching at a parents teachers meeting, this woman, the mother of one of the students, came and she was telling me that they belonged to a Reform synagogue, and she was telling me that she grew up, I guess, in some kind of, she just believed, as a child, she believed in the Torah. And she said that when she was 12 years old, her parents took her to a non-kosher restaurant, and they pretty much forced her to eat the food. And she says as soon as she put the non-kosher food in her mouth, she actually threw up. Her body, somebody's at the door. They were at the door anyway. If you don't mind. She physically rejected the food instantly, right? And I've heard of such stories, but you know the experience yourself, yes, somebody's coming in. Oh, you know yourself. Like, there are times that you, what do you call it? You're involved in something, and your body tells you, this is, I don't really want to be in this, right? Your body tells you. That means that you've got a certain sensitivity. Maybe you ignored it initially, but there's a certain sensitivity that, the body really feels a lot better when you're doing good things than when you're doing things that are not good, right? So that's what we want to get to in the journey from Pesach to Shavuot. Okay? Now the question is, so what the Alter Rebbe said was that the Torah says that you have to experience your liberation every single day. Right? And remembering your liberation doesn't mean just, oh yeah, a long time ago, 3,400 years ago approximately, God took us out of Egypt. That's not what remembering means. Remembering means that when you remember something, it's a reality in your life. Okay? As a matter of fact, there's an amazing thing from Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman says that the ability to forget was given to you to forget the past. And the ability to remember was given to you so that you could remember the future. Okay? What does that mean? No, you can talk.
Me?
No, I'm looking at you, but I mean him. I mean you. What does it mean to remember the future? Right. What do you usually remember?
Could you repeat the
Forgetting is to forget the past. Obviously, not everything, right? You want to know your address, right? Okay. And remembering is to remember the future. What does that mean?
Like keep your goals in line. So like remember that like whatever your actions that you have like now, actually doing now, have a significance in the future.
Remember, very good. Remember where you want to go. Remember where you're going to, right? I told you the story a couple of weeks ago, but not everybody was here. Mendel Futterfass was one of the last Lubavitcher Hasidim to get out of Russia in the 70s. And he was, the Russians, the communists were merciless with the Lubavitcher Hasidim. Many of them were just killed for what they were doing, for teaching Torah and so on. And if they were caught, with the Jewish activities, they would get sent off to Siberia. So he was sent off to Siberia 3 times. You were here for that story, I think. Anyway, one night, so he was in Siberia. He was in this prison with hardcore criminals, and he was sharing a cell with a convicted murderer. But this murderer, for some reason or other, he liked Mendel, and even though the other prisoners, would try to pick fights with him and beat him up and so on, this guy took care of Mendel. He became like his bodyguard when Mendel wanted to daven. He stood guard and so on. Anyway, one night they had a talent show for the prisoners because you got to keep them a little bit happy, otherwise there's going to be a mutiny. So now this murderer, his talent was he was a tightrope walker. Okay, and he walks across this tightrope. Somewhere along the way, he jumps, does a 360, lands back on his feet, and continues. Later at night, he says to Reb Mendel, "Do you know how I did that?" Reb Mendel said, "Yes." So he says, "How?" He says, "You never lose sight of where you're going." So he says, "That's right. But how did you know?" He says, "I have to do the same thing. Right? I always have to do the same thing. And right, you got to know that's memory. Okay, so to remember the Exodus means don't lose sight that you have been liberated, and that you are supposed, and that you can, and that we're supposed to experience our liberation every single day. Right? So what are we enslaved to, and when are we supposed to experience that liberation? So particularly when we're saying Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, that is the time to really experience the liberation. And liberation in what sense? That nothing of this world is going to hold me back from being ready and willing to give my entire being to God. With all your heart, love God with all your heart, with all your life, even if you have to give your life, and with all your wealth, and that also includes with all your gifts and talents. Whatever you're blessed with to be ma'od, whatever you're blessed with to be very much. Okay? Now, when you experience that in your prayers, the reality is that we are a composite being made up of a divine soul and an animal soul. Okay? The difference, one way of looking at the difference between the two is that the divine soul is constantly seeking to be in union with Hashem, with God, and with amongst all of us. Okay? The animal soul thinks about its own self-preservation and self-gratification. Okay? Your mother made you a birthday cake, you're 10 years old, and your mother says, every guest gets a slice, okay, gets a piece of the cake. So the first guest shows up, your big cake is now being divided into two. They get some more guests show up, my piece is getting smaller and smaller and smaller, right? The divine soul says, this is awesome. With a little bit of sugar and flour and eggs, I can make somebody happy. The animal soul is saying, my piece is getting smaller, my piece is getting smaller, right? Just to illustrate a little bit, okay? So you can have this experience when you're saying Shema and liberation. I'm not attached to anything worldly. I'm ready to give my life for God. Okay? Beautiful. But what happens when prayers are over? And it's time to go have kiddush, or to eat your breakfast, or to eat your lunch. What happens then? Did your animal soul change in any way? No. Right? The animal soul says, listen, buddy, I let you go to shul. Now it's my turn. Okay? Right? I knew a guy that Shabbos morning, he'd stand in the streets, wait to find out which shul has the big kiddush. That's where he would go down. Okay? Fine, I have no complaints. It's fine, you know. Okay? So the animal soul says, okay, good, you know, you took me to synagogue, I went along with you, I didn't bother you, I let you daven, but now it's my turn, okay? And that's pretty good. Usually, the divine soul is quite enslaved to the animal soul. And the way the Talmud describes that enslavement is that it says in the following phrase, it says, the thief, as he's breaking and entering, is praying to God to be successful. Which means to say that when the animal soul is corrupted, the animal soul says to the divine soul, you know, tonight we're going to do a robbery, and guess what? You're coming along, you're going to pray to God that we succeed. You're praying to God. God said, don't steal. Business is business. Okay? Don't mix business with religion. As a matter of fact, if you want to, yeah, okay. Okay? Right? I mean, that's how we think a lot, right? Okay. So the animal soul can very well be the dominant feature or the dominant character of my being. And the animal soul, so sometimes it'll come along to shul. It's a nice shul, it's air conditioned, we can talk politics, we can talk business with people around there, this and that, and say, okay, I'll come along to shul. It's okay, you want to daven for 30 seconds? Okay, I'll let you daven for 30 seconds, But so the question is, how, not whether we can or not, but how do we go about transforming the animal soul so that my physical being, right, receives the Torah no less than my intellectual being, no less than my divine soul? How do we go about that? Okay. So basically, the Alter Rebbe is explaining that you have to go back, you have to reach that place where the animal soul originates. It didn't originate down here in this world. Nothing originated in this world. Everything in this world has its source in the higher realm. Okay? The glass, the water, everything. Okay? And the animal soul, not only your divine soul. And the animal soul originated as one. The animal soul originated, in its origin, it was one of those angels, one of those Chayot HaKodesh, one of those angels that is constantly yearning to be back in union with God, is constantly yearning for its self-gratification, and the gratification that it wants is to be totally absorbed into God. The animal soul, when it first comes down into your being, is not bad. It's when it gets corrupted that it starts behaving in strange ways. But the reason that a person is willing to do things that could be very self-destructive just for pleasure is because at its origin, these angels are willing to give up their identity just for the gratification of being in union with God. And that's why an animal soul here in this world is willing to go and do things that, that this is killing, that this is terrible, right? It's very destructive, but it's being corrupted and it just wants that gratification no matter what. Okay?
Because the gratification in that sense is equated to the gratification of serving Hashem?
No, it's just no, it's not. It's just that it's out of balance. It's just like
right. It's like a meat and a fula, but that's the like.
But in other words, but it's the same way that the angel doesn't mind that it's going to lose its identity, right? By going into like a little candle is drawn to a big flame. Right? Put a little candle next to a big flame, you'll see that the flame of the little candle is drawn to the big flame, right? And if you put it in there, it's going to lose its identity, right? But it's drawn to it. So the animal soul is drawn to gratification. It's part of the process of self-preservation. Okay, to gratify your needs. Okay, so what Chassidus is teaching is that when you remind your animal soul that it originates in a very high, holy place, so you're beginning to tell your animal soul, there's nothing wrong with the fact that you are seeking gratification. It's good that you are seeking gratification. That's what you're like. That's what you're designed. It's not even a matter of choice, okay? But know what is the real gratification that you're looking for. What is the real gratification that you, at your origin, the real gratification that you're looking for is for unity and for being in union with Hashem and with all of us together. That's what you're looking for. Okay, so the whole mitzvah of the lifting of the Sorah, of the lifting of the barley that was done on the second day of Pesach, where they went and they harvested the barley. And then the Kohen would take the barley and he would lift it up, okay? What does that symbolize? So barley is animal food, okay? And the animal food, and we're not reading it from inside today, but the animal food that we're talking about over here is like this, that food is something that you eat and your body takes the good out of it and expels the waste, right? Okay. Everything in this world has divine sparks that have, so to speak, fallen or descended and are embedded in the food that you eat, embedded in just about everything. That's what gives it their existence. When you take some food or some water and you eat it, or you take your money and you use it, l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven, what you're doing is, the way Chassidut is explaining it, is that you're liberating those holy sparks from their physical context, and those holy sparks become angels that ascend to a very high supernal realm, actually to the place where your animal soul originates from, and they sing a song and they get absorbed into their source, and then they're and then somehow they come back to you in some way. Okay, believe the coming back part's not so sure about that exactly, but or how to explain that. But okay, but basically, what we're doing over here by doing these things is that in a certain sense, right? So you're taking this barley, which is animal food, okay, and you're that mitzvah, okay, of the lifting of the Omer back to its source, right? That mitzvah empowers us to not only subjugate the animal soul, but actually to go ahead and then start working on the transformation of the animal soul. And the transformation of the animal soul involves the 49 days between Pesach and Shavuot. It involves the counting of the Omer, but each day, for example, today is the 23rd day. Today is the interaction between the attribute of Gevura with the host of the week, which is Netzach, okay? And one has to get involved with and try to figure out, okay, how are these Sfirot operant within me right now, and how can I, or what can I do that as a result, these Sfirot are going to be luminous and reflecting the Sfirot as they are in the supernal realms, so that God's light is being reflected here in this world.
What are the two Sfarad in English?
Netzach and Gevura is strength, judgment, severity, restraint, and Netzach is victory. Now, victory has Netzach in Hebrew has a number of meanings. Anybody here know what you call a conductor of an orchestra? In Hebrew? Yeah, mayor maestro.
Malchan.
What?
Malchan? Is it
No, that's the composer.
composer.
What do you call a conductor?
Something about that.
Very good, very good. You see?
Ding, ding, ding.
Lamnatseach mizmor shir. Menatseach.
Oh.
We use that in
All the time. Okay. Okay. And so menatseach. Okay. And so as a verb, menatseach is to be victorious. Menatseach. Nitzachti. I won the game. Okay. Menatseach. Okay, me. But as a noun, as the conductor, what is the conductor doing? Conductor is basically taking all the various resources of the musicians that are present and deciding who's going to do what and when and how, right? And putting it all together creates that beautiful music that he wants to bring out, right? It's the same process that you do when you're doing pottery or things like that and so on, right? You're taking this color and this color, it's all, that's, so Netzach is about knowing your resources and bringing them together like a general in an army, so to speak, and using all your resources to achieve your goal. That's what Netzach is about. Okay? And Gvura is the ability to keep things in order and to keep it, so you, right? So you got your different components that are working and so on. So like the conductor holds a baton in his hand, right? You know why? It's like he's saying to the musicians, no, you do what you're told. And not, as a matter of fact, I had this friend who was a drummer from Russia, and he told me that when they would practice, if he didn't do something the way the conductor wanted, the conductor would actually whack him.
Told you.
What?
Only in
Sorry
Russia.
about that.
Oh, you saw that movie? No.
We were discussing this yesterday.
Yeah, but he would actually, he'd say, like, the guy would whack him, because music, by the way, is not chesed. Music is gevura. Music is severity. Music is very, like, you hit the note correctly, or if you got the wrong note, you just messed it up.
Unless you're playing jazz.
Then
Still Gvura.
Still gevura, okay? But like, for example, when Judy hears one of Shlomo's songs being sung correctly, she, like when we were davening Rosh Chodesh last week, she said to David Steinberg afterwards, she thanked him for going out and correcting you guys, but she said she was going to go out and kill somebody. Like, I mean, Shlomo nearly killed me once. I was sitting next to him at Shavuot Shudis in New York, and we were singing, and I managed to say something wrong, and he looked at me like oh yeah. And a friend of mine told me that his father, like the Shalom, knew Chazanut, was an expert in Chazanut, and they had the best chazan in the city in their shul. And if the chazan made one slight mistake Shabbos morning, he said, my father's Shabbos was ruined. He walked around the rest of the day, I can't believe he did that. I can't believe he did that. And so on. Music is a very, and the Hebrew word lizameir, zmirot. What's the word? What does the word lizameir mean?
To sing.
To prune. To prune. Mazmera is a pruning fork, a pruning hook. Okay? So music is like a very, it's got to be, so Gevurah, right? And Netzach, that's how they interact, okay? So are you using your resources in the best way that they could be used? Are you making sure that you don't waste your resources? Okay, so the fact that we have this mitzvah of the lifting of the Omer gives us the potential to actually use these midot, these emotional attributes of ours, these sfirot, and to adjust them and modify them so that they reflect what they're really meant to do as they are in the supernal realms. Okay? That's the work of the journey. Now, there are times where you just feel like, I wish I could do it, but I don't feel I can do it. Right? Well, I have a friend in Montreal, a very holy rabbi, and we haven't been in touch in the last few years so much, but like there was a period of my life that my Yiddishkeit had crashed and so on, and then at some point it started to pick up again. I would go to this class that he was giving on Thursday nights in Me'or Einayim from the Chernobyl. And the Me'or Einayim is like parts of it have been translated into English. It's a very inspirational Hasidic text. He was a student of the Baal Shem Tov. And here I was like feeling that inspiration, but also the more I felt it, the more I felt like, wow, I'm so distant from all this. So I didn't know what to do with it. So one day I just wrote a little note. Didn't put my name on it. And when there was nobody in the shul, I went over to his stender, to his lectern, and I left it over there. And the note I wrote, saying I really appreciate what we're learning and but I feel so distant. And I just left it there. A couple of days later, he sees me. He comes over, he says, "Du hast es geschrieben? You wrote that note?" He figured it out. So he said, "Yeah, yes," and I said, "Yes." He said, "Ich kann dir nicht helfen. I can't help you. Ich habe dasselbe Problem. I have the same problem." Okay? In other words, there's many levels to all these things. Okay, so you go from one level to the next level, and then you got to go to the next level and the next level, right? So then, over the years, we kept on having this discussion about there's certain things that I felt I just kept on crashing with. Bless you. So finally, one day he said, and and it's interesting that it's only after a number of years of this back and forth that he finally came and he said the following thing. He says, "I can't give you any other advice other than sit down and cry over it. If you'll cry over it, the gates will open up." Okay? In other words, right, a lot of times we learn something, we get inspired, we want to do something about it, etc., etc. But the question is, do you care about it so much that you're ready to cry over it? That's a significant question. And children cry easily, and unfortunately, we raise them in such a way and we say, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. You know, but don't be a baby, stop crying. That's a mistake. It's just we got to learn what's worth crying over and what's not worth crying over. But to be educated in such a way as to feel that to cry is a sign of being childish or like and so on, that's terrible. And there's a Hasidic aphorism that tears are the mikveh of the eyes. Okay, it's and truthfully, I wish I was able to cry over certain things, you know. And so anybody who's trying to start a business, start a crying therapy clinic. But yeah, you'd be surprised how many people would sign up for that. There's laughter therapy, there's crying therapy, you know?
People who cry, I can't teach people how to cry. It just happens.
No, but you get a bunch, you get just like, like in the old days, for the comedy shows, they would have professional laughers, So you get a couple of professional criers in the crowd, and okay, but
yeah.
I mean, all joking aside, you get what I'm saying. You understand? There are things that are worth crying about, and the crying is sincere. The gates open up. In other words, so when we feel that we've come to a point that I just can't seem to break through that fence, that barrier, or whatever it is. Okay, so try asking Hashem for compassion. And if you can even get to shed a tear, you don't have to cry, buckets. Even one tear is significant, right? Even one tear. Somebody at the door there. Somebody's at the door. I think
he was just looking at the plants.
He was just looking at something? Yeah? Okay. Safe. So, very often we go on a journey and that's Asher. Very often we go on a journey and we make progress, but on a spiritual journey, the more you progress, the challenges can get greater and greater. That's the way it is. Okay? That's the way it is. It's like, if you're not doing anything, you're not invaded by strange thoughts. Get up and start davening the Amidah, and all of a sudden, there's 1,000 things going through your head, right? Because that's the way the Satan operates. You're about to do something positive, about to do something good. Satan does his job. He blocks. That's what the word Satan means. It means to block. His job is to block. And there are times that the things that you need to do can actually be pretty frightening, because you might discover certain aspects to your being that sort of like you didn't really realize that there's this aspect of your character that you need to fix, But as you're making progress, you discover that there's a lot more to do than bless you. There's a lot more to do than you ever imagined, and you easily chicken out, or we get discouraged. I tried so many times. So it's good to remember the teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. And there's a lot of other teachings in this. Imagine the father or mother is watching their child, 6, 8 months old, getting up, falling down, getting up, falling down, getting up, falling down. And imagine the adult goes over to the child and he says, kiddo, in the last hour, you've stood up and fallen 52 times. Why don't you give up? And the kid looks at the adult and says, is it guaranteed that when I'm going to be an adult, I'm also going to be stupid? Right? So don't lose that child. Don't lose that child. Right? And that's a phenomenon that we have to deal with all the time. Right? Anyway, so that's basically a synopsis of the manner that we've been learning. So tomorrow, God willing, we'll finish it, okay? Thank you for being here.
Thank you.